Ngozi still remembered the morning her husband Chinedu left for Europe. The entire village had gathered to wish him well. People hugged him, prayed for him, celebrated his opportunity. At the center of the crowd stood Ngozi holding their 2-year-old son. She was smiling, but inside she was terrified. Chinedu promised he would return within 3 years. Just enough time to earn money, build a house, and secure their future. Before boarding the bus, he held her hands tightly and looked directly into her eyes. "No matter how far I go, you are my wife." Those words became her comfort for years. Whenever loneliness became unbearable, she repeated them. Whenever people questioned his absence, she remembered them. Whenever she missed him, she believed them. She watched the bus disappear down the dusty road, unaware that the promise she trusted most would one day become the source of her greatest pain. The first year passed quickly. Chinedu called almost every day. He sent photographs of his workplace. He talked about his dreams. He spoke about the future they would share. Every month money arrived without fail. Ngozi used it carefully. She paid rent, bought food, cared for their son. She proudly told everyone that her husband was working hard for the family. By the second year, the calls became less frequent. Chinedu blamed long working hours. Ngozi understood. By the third year, he postponed his return home. Then another year passed. Then another. Every time she asked when he would return, there was a new reason. A new opportunity. A new financial goal. A new excuse. Yet she remained patient because she believed sacrifices require time. She never imagined that while she was counting the years, Chinedu was counting on her loyalty. As the years passed, Ngozi became both mother and father to her children. She attended school meetings alone, celebrated birthdays alone, handled sicknesses alone, solved family problems alone. Every challenge fell on her shoulders. Still, she defended Chinedu. Whenever relatives suggested something was wrong, she immediately stopped them. "He is doing this for us," she would say. "One day it will all be worth it." Her children grew older. Their son entered secondary school. Their daughter barely remembered what her father looked like in person. Most of her memories came from photographs and occasional video calls. Sometimes the children asked difficult questions. "Why does Daddy never come home?" Ngozi always gave the same answer. "Soon." It became the most repeated word in her life. Soon. 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 A word that kept hope alive while hiding a painful truth. By the 8th year, Chinedu had achieved what many people in the village could only dream about. A beautiful modern house stood proudly on family land. Neighbors admired it. Relatives praised it. Visitors stopped to take photographs. Everyone celebrated Chinedu's success. Ngozi felt proud whenever she walked through the large rooms. She imagined family dinners, holiday celebrations, a future where they would finally live together under the same roof. Yet one detail always bothered her. Chinedu never seemed excited about moving back. Whenever she discussed his return, he changed the subject. Whenever she talked about living together again, his answers became vague. At first she ignored it. Then she noticed it happening more often. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't explain why. Deep inside, a small voice warned her that the future she imagined might not exist. Everything changed one evening when Ngozi called her husband unexpectedly. Instead of Chinedu answering, a woman picked up the phone. Both women remained silent for a moment. "Hello?" Ngozi asked again. The stranger sounded surprised before abruptly ending the call. Hours later, Chinedu finally returned her call. His explanation was simple. Too simple. He claimed a colleague had borrowed his phone. He laughed and dismissed her concerns. But something felt different. Something felt wrong. 3 weeks later, an anonymous social media account sent Ngozi a message. The profile had no name and no photograph. Just one sentence. Your husband is not living alone abroad. Attached to the message was a photograph. Ngozi opened it and felt her heart stop. The image showed Chinedu standing beside a smiling woman. Between them stood a little girl who looked around 6 years old. They weren't standing like strangers. They weren't standing like friends. They looked like a family. As Ngozi stared at the photograph, her hands began shaking. For 10 years she had trusted one man, one promise, and one future. Now a single image threatened to destroy all three. Ngozi couldn't sleep that night. The photograph remained open on her phone screen. Every time she looked at it, her heart broke a little more. The woman standing beside Chinedu looked comfortable. Familiar. The little girl standing between them looked happy. Too happy. This wasn't a random picture. This wasn't a coworker. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It looked like a family photograph. For 10 years, Ngozi had defended her husband. For 10 years, she had silenced relatives who questioned him. For 10 years, she had believed every excuse. Now a single image threatened to destroy everything she thought she knew. She wanted to confront him immediately, but something stopped her. If the photograph was real, Chinedu would simply deny it. She needed proof. Real proof. The next morning she woke up with a determination she had never felt before. For the first time in 10 years, she decided to investigate her own husband. Over the next several days, Ngozi began searching through old messages, social media accounts, and photographs. At first she found nothing unusual. Then small details started appearing. A comment from a woman on one of Chinedu's posts. A birthday photograph showing the same little girl from the anonymous message. A tagged location matching the city where Chinedu lived. Piece by piece, the puzzle began coming together. Every discovery made her more uncomfortable. Every discovery raised new questions. Why had he never mentioned these people? Why had he hidden them? Why did the child look so comfortable around him? One evening, while scrolling through an old account, Ngozi found something that made her hands shake. A photograph posted 5 years earlier. Chinedu standing beside the same woman. Both wearing matching outfits. Both smiling. The caption simply read, "Family Day." Ngozi felt as though the ground beneath her had disappeared. The next week, she contacted a distant cousin living in the same country as Chinedu. She didn't reveal everything. She simply asked a few questions. The cousin promised to help. Days later, he called back. His voice sounded nervous. "Ngozi, I think you need to sit down." Her heart immediately started racing. The cousin explained that several members of the local African community knew Chinedu. Not as a married man with a wife back home, but as a husband living with another woman. Ngozi felt physically sick. She couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. For 10 years she had remained loyal. For 10 years she had sacrificed her youth. For 10 years she had waited. And while she waited, her husband had built an entirely different life. The betrayal was bigger than she imagined. That night, Chinedu called as usual. He spoke casually about work. About money. About future plans. As though nothing had changed. Ngozi listened quietly. For the first time, she noticed how rehearsed his answers sounded. How carefully he avoided certain topics. How quickly he changed the subject whenever she discussed his return home. Eventually she interrupted him. "Who is she?" Silence. Complete silence. Several seconds passed. Then he laughed nervously. "What are you talking about?" Ngozi mentioned the photograph. Another silence followed. This one was longer. More uncomfortable. Finally Chinedu spoke. But instead of denying it, he asked a question. Who sent you that picture? In that moment, Ngozi received the answer she feared most. The confession did not come immediately. Instead, Chinedu begged her not to jump to conclusions. He claimed things were complicated. He claimed she didn't understand the situation. He claimed he would explain everything soon. But Ngozi had already heard enough. Innocent people explain. Guilty people delay. After ending the call, she sat alone in the beautiful house he had built. The same house she once viewed as a symbol of love. Now it felt different. Empty. Cold. Almost mocking. Every wall reminded her of the years she sacrificed. Every room reminded her of promises that were never kept. Then another message arrived from the anonymous account. This time it contained a document. A marriage certificate. And printed on that certificate was Chinedu's name alongside another woman's. Ngozi stared at the screen in disbelief. Her husband hadn't simply lied. He had secretly married someone else abroad. And the worst part was yet to come. Ngozi could barely sleep after seeing the marriage certificate. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Chinedu standing beside another woman. Every sacrifice she had made suddenly felt meaningless. For 10 years she had remained loyal. For 10 years she had protected his reputation. For 10 years she had believed every excuse. Now she was questioning everything. The following morning she contacted the anonymous account again. This time the response came quickly. More photographs arrived. More evidence. More painful truths. One image showed Chinedu celebrating a birthday with the same woman and little girl. Another showed them posing in front of a decorated Christmas tree. A third showed them attending a community event together. The photographs spanned several years. This was not a recent relationship. This was not a mistake. This was an entire life. A life he had hidden while his real family waited for him at home. Ngozi stared at the images in disbelief. The man she thought she knew no longer existed. Determined to uncover the truth, Ngozi asked her cousin abroad to investigate further. Several days later, he called with information that shattered her remaining hope. According to people in the local community, Chinedu had introduced the woman as his wife years earlier. They attended events together. Shared a home together. Raised the little girl together. Many people believed they were a normal family. Nobody knew about Ngozi or the children waiting in Africa. Nobody knew that another wife existed. The revelation felt like a knife through her heart. Chinedu hadn't simply lied. He had erased them. While Ngozi struggled alone, he had created a new identity. A new family. A new future. For years she believed distance separated them. Now she realized deception had separated them long before the ocean ever did. That evening, Ngozi called Chinedu again. This time she refused to accept excuses. The moment he answered, she spoke calmly. Too calmly. She listed the photographs. The marriage certificate. The witness statements. The little girl. One by one, she presented the evidence. Chinedu remained silent. The silence lasted so long that Ngozi thought the call had disconnected. Finally he spoke. His voice sounded defeated. Gone was the confident man who always had explanations. Gone was the husband who promised everything would be fine. In his place stood a man running out of lies. I was going to tell you eventually, he whispered. The words hit harder than any denial could have. Ngozi laughed bitterly. 10 years of deception reduced to a single sentence. 10 years of waiting dismissed with a weak excuse. In that moment she realized something important. The person she loved existed only in her memories. The real Chinedu was a stranger. The confession continued for nearly an hour. Chinedu admitted he met the woman several years after moving abroad. He claimed he felt lonely. He claimed life became complicated. He claimed he never intended for things to go this far. Yet every explanation only made the betrayal worse. Because every choice had been deliberate. Every lie had been intentional. Every hidden year required hundreds of smaller lies to maintain. Ngozi listened quietly. By the end of the conversation, she felt emotionally exhausted. The sadness remained, but something else appeared alongside it. Anger. Not explosive anger. Calm anger. The kind that arrives when someone finally accepts the truth. For the first time in years, she stopped waiting for Chinedu to become the husband he promised to be. Instead, she began thinking about what came next. A week later, the news reached the village. At first only relatives knew. Then neighbors found out. Soon everyone was talking. The same people who once praised Chinedu now shook their heads in disappointment. Many were shocked. Others admitted they had suspected something for years. Ngozi suddenly found herself answering difficult questions everywhere she went. Some people pitied her. Others admired her strength. Through it all, she remained focused on her children. They deserved stability. They deserved honesty. They deserved better than the situation they had been forced into. Then another unexpected message arrived from abroad. This time it wasn't from the anonymous account. It was from the other woman. And what she revealed would change everything once again. Because she hadn't known about Ngozi either. For years, both women had been living inside the same lie. When Ngozi opened the message from the other woman, she expected hostility. She expected excuses. She expected blame. Instead, she found an apology. The woman introduced herself as Amora. Her first words left Ngozi speechless. "I didn't know about you." At first, Ngozi refused to believe her. How could someone live with a man for years and not know he already had a wife and children? But as their conversation continued, the pieces began fitting together. Amora explained that Chinedu told her he had never married. He claimed he had no children. He claimed he was completely alone when he arrived abroad. Just as he had lied to Ngozi for years, he had lied to Amora too. Suddenly, the situation looked very different. The woman Ngozi viewed as the enemy was also a victim. They had both trusted the same man. They had both believed the same promises. They had both built their lives around the same deception. For the first time, Ngozi felt sympathy instead of anger. Over the following weeks, the two women spoke frequently. What began as uncomfortable conversations slowly became honest discussions. Amora shared details about her life with Chinedu. She explained how they met. How he gained her trust. How he convinced her they were building a future together. Each story revealed another lie. Another secret. Another betrayal. The similarities shocked both women. Chinedu used the same promises. The same excuses. The same emotional tactics. It was as though he had been living two separate lives using the same script. Sometimes Ngozi cried during their conversations. Sometimes Amara cried too. Neither woman could understand how one person maintained such a complicated deception for so many years. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Chinedu had spent years manipulating both of them. And now his carefully constructed world was beginning to collapse. Eventually, Amora revealed something even more shocking. Chinedu was facing financial problems abroad. Serious financial problems. For years he had sent money home to maintain his image as a successful provider. At the same time, he was supporting a second household. The pressure had become overwhelming. Debts were growing. Bills were piling up. The truth explained many things. It explained why his calls became less frequent. It explained why he constantly delayed returning home. It explained why he always seemed worried whenever discussions about the future arose. Chinedu had trapped himself inside a web of lies that required constant maintenance. Every year made the situation worse. Every lie required another lie. Every secret demanded another secret. Now the weight of those decisions was finally catching up with him. Several months later, Chinedu returned to the village for the first time in nearly 10 years. News spread quickly. People gathered outside the family home. Some were curious. Others were angry. Many simply wanted answers. When Chinedu stepped out of the vehicle, he looked older. Tired. Defeated. The confident man who left years earlier was gone. Waiting for him were Ngozi, their children, and several close relatives. The reunion felt nothing like he imagined. There were no celebrations. No hugs. No joyful tears. Only silence. Painful silence. Chinedu attempted to explain himself. He spoke about mistakes. Regret. Poor decisions. But the words sounded empty. The damage had already been done. Trust once broken is difficult to rebuild. Some wounds require years to heal. Others never fully heal at all. As he stood before the family he abandoned, Chinedu finally faced the consequences of choices he spent a decade avoiding. That evening, after everyone left, Ngozi sat alone on the porch of the beautiful house she once viewed as a symbol of hope. The house remained exactly the same. Yet everything felt different. For years she believed her future depended on Chinedu. For years she waited for him to return and complete the life they planned together. Now she understood something important. She had already survived without him. She had raised the children, managed the household, carried the family through difficult times. The strength she spent years searching for had been inside her all along. As the sun disappeared below the horizon, Ngozi made a decision. Her future would no longer be defined by betrayal. It would be defined by resilience. What she didn't know was that her greatest chapter was still ahead. Because sometimes the end of one story becomes the beginning of a much better one. The months following Chinedu's return were not easy, but they were different. For the first time in 10 years, Ngozi stopped waiting. She stopped checking her phone for promises that never came. She stopped building her future around someone else's decisions. Instead, she focused on herself and her children. The energy she once spent worrying about Chinedu was redirected toward building a better life. She expanded her small business. She attended training programs. She learned new skills. Every day she became more confident. Her children noticed the change immediately. The sadness that once followed her everywhere slowly disappeared. In its place came determination. The village watched with admiration. Many expected Ngozi to break after discovering the truth. Instead, she grew stronger. Every challenge that was meant to destroy her became another reason to keep moving forward. For the first time in years, she wasn't surviving. She was living. A year later, Ngozi's business had become one of the most successful in the area. What began as a small market stall grew into a thriving enterprise. She employed several women from the village, many of whom were single mothers facing struggles similar to her own. People often asked how she managed to rebuild her life after such a painful betrayal. Her answer was always simple. I stopped focusing on what I lost and started focusing on what I still had. Those words inspired many people. Women traveled from neighboring communities to hear her story. They wanted advice. They wanted hope. They wanted proof that life could continue after heartbreak. Ngozi became a symbol of resilience. Not because she planned it. Because she refused to surrender when life became difficult. Every success reminded her that her value never depended on a husband living abroad. It depended on the strength she carried within herself. Meanwhile, Chinedu's situation continued to deteriorate. The financial problems he tried to hide became impossible to ignore. Relationships that were built on deception began falling apart. The respect he once enjoyed disappeared. People who admired him now viewed him differently. For years he believed money could replace presence. He believed sending monthly payments was enough to fulfill his responsibilities. Now he understood the truth. Children need more than money. Families need more than financial support. Trust, honesty, and commitment cannot be transferred through bank accounts. They must be lived every day. The realization came too late. He watched from a distance as Ngozi built a life without him. A life stronger than the one he promised to create. For the first time, he truly understood what he had lost. One afternoon, during a community celebration, Ngozi was invited to speak before hundreds of people. The event honored individuals who made positive contributions to the village. Standing on stage, she looked across the crowd and saw familiar faces. Some had supported her. Others had doubted her. Many had watched her journey unfold over the years. She smiled and shared a lesson she learned through pain. Sometimes the people we trust most disappoint us. Sometimes life takes a direction we never expected. But our future should never depend on someone else's choices. The audience listened carefully. Many nodded in agreement. Some wiped tears from their eyes. Her words came from experience. They came from years of sacrifice, heartbreak, and growth. By the time she finished speaking, the crowd erupted into applause. Not because she was perfect. Because she represented perseverance. As the sun set that evening, Ngozi stood outside the beautiful house that once symbolized her waiting. Now it symbolized something entirely different. Survival. Growth. Independence. Her children stood beside her laughing and talking about their future. Looking at them, she realized she had gained something far greater than the life she originally planned. She gained confidence. Wisdom. Strength. She learned that betrayal can break your heart, but it does not have to break your future. She learned that happiness does not come from waiting for someone to keep a promise. It comes from believing in yourself when those promises are broken. As darkness settled over the village, Ngozi smiled peacefully. The woman who once spent 10 years waiting was gone. In her place stood a woman who had reclaimed her life. And that became the greatest victory of all.